Welcome to Sow Chatty. I'm Kerry from Dog on the Plot.
And I'm Claire from the Farmyard Garden.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Kerry. How are you this week?
I'm all right. Yes, I think getting on top of things slowly. Speaking of which, have you done the jobs that you promised at the end of last week's episode? Do you need a reminder of what they were?
I think I promised 3 things, didn't I? I think I promised to sow the giant onions, to tidy the weedy bed, and to sort out the grapevine. That's the 3
correct.
things. You did remind me before we came on air.
Don't give away the backstage stuff, Claire. Dispel the magic.
There's no magic here. So I tidied the weedy bed and the path that was around it. So I've sorted that out. I have yet to do the grapevine. I really need to get on with that this week. And I've just forgotten the other thing now already, haven't I?
The giant onion seeds.
Oh, yeah, I haven't sown the giant onion seeds. I misplaced them temporarily. I have now found them again. So that will be a job for this week. And in fact, I needed to message Pete because the seeds came from Pete at the Cornish Gardens. And I can't remember aren't these the ones that people were sowing indoors last year and keeping them under heat lamps? I don't necessarily know. That's it. I don't think I want to do that. So
no.
Is that a step too far? Do I just concede now? Maybe. But anyway, I need to sow those giant onions anyway. Now, I can't remember what your things were for last week. So have you done your things?
I only had one, but I'm going to get to it a little bit later.
Okie doke.
We'll come back to that.
Suspense.
Can you remind people what it was that you need to do with the grapevine? Because I've forgotten.
Oh, it needs tying in. It's
okay. So it's in the ground.
Oh yeah, it's in the ground, but I pruned it.
More than mine.
How long's yours been out of the ground for?
Since this time last year.
Oh well, not too long, Kerry. It's fine. No, it's all been pruned, and I was leaving the top to grow 2 leaders to go either way. And those leaders are now doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're trying to cling on to the actual fruit cage, and I just need to put in the supports and the wire across. But it took me ages. If anyone remembers the video, it took me absolutely ages to knock the one in that I already did. So I've been hoping that Duncan would have a spare 5 minutes or so just to knock those bits in. But he's busy building a new farm track at the moment, and so that he can ready to bring the cows in for winter. So yeah, that's what he's been up to. So no Duncan to help me with a hammer at the moment.
I think I remember that actually. Didn't you plant it quite forward and you were like, duh, I wish I'd planted this nearer to because you could have then just attached it to the cage.
Yeah. I could have done. But these are the things we do.
We do these daft things, don't we, Claire? And we will get to those. But first of all, hot or not, what's hot in your garden this week?
Well, where do I start? I mean, if you've seen the video on Sunday, I just had the most amazing harvest of root vegetables. So what's hot in my garden this week is definitely the root veg. I mean, it was just one thing after another. And I had a few funny comments about, are they all that big? And I started replying to say, no, I'm just that small in comparison to them. I'm just tiny. But the potatoes. I mean, have you honestly ever seen a potato that size? Because no. I have not. I have not seen a potato as big as that.
Ali said it was the size of a baby. I remarked, as Liam and I were watching it on Sunday morning, that it was the size of a foot. And then Liam accused me as I was watching your video. I must have been making some grumbles. He was like, you've got vegetable envy. Like, I have. I could not believe what was coming out of the ground, Claire. The size, that celeriac, the size of your head.
And they're all the same size, and that's not that I'm bragging, but they are all the same size. But they've grown very differently this year because last year they kind of grew themselves more in the ground, which is why they were so hard to harvest. And it took me ages. And whereas when I touched it this week, I could see that it was wobbly and it pulled straight out of the ground. The celeriac was just sitting on the ground. And I don't know whether that's the secret of why they've done so well this year, that they literally had the space to grow. And it was delicious. I made celeriac mash with it. We had it for our Sunday dinner, and there's 2 batches in the freezer. And even Duncan ate it, and Mary. So I now have.
Would they usually not eat it?
No, normally not. No, Duncan thinks things that he puts that in the funny veg thing. So
Oh, well, we'll be talking about funny veg
we
later.
will. But he loved it, absolutely loved it. And I think he preferred it because I did mix it with mash. Well, I put potato in and mixed it with that. And not a lot. It was probably well over 3/4 celeriac, but it just sort of slightly altered the texture for him, putting a bit of potato in it, mashing with it, and they loved it. So yeah. I mean, and the carrots, from how small they were earlier in the season, yeah, I can't get over how good they are. Next year, I'm going to raise the parsnip box and the carrot box up a little bit to see if that
Really?
helps with, well, twofold. I thought it might help with the parsnips if they're not quite rooted into the ground below, because, I mean, they're in very soft, loose soil. I get a lot of comments asking what I'd grown the carrots in, and the boxes are filled with play sand and seed sowing compost. That's it. I've never fertilized it. I just put new bags in each year, and so there's a little bit extra nutrient there. But it is very, very loose. But obviously, if the parsnips are getting into the ground below, they're sort of hitting the clay pan, and then I can't pull them out. So I think if I
because you
raise
said
it,
you'd snapped the bottom off, didn't you?
and
When
it
you
was
were
only
taking out the
I mean,
front.
it's only a cosmetic bit, isn't it? You're not really going to eat that tiny bit at the bottom, but I really wanted the whole thing. But if I raise them, I was thinking to myself, it will help with the parsnips potentially, but also just that extra height layer, because we are a little bit kind of pushing it for carrot root fly, because the boxes are only 50 centimeters tall. So if I put another 6 inches on there, that should, if we have a bad season for carrot root fly, I mean, I've never had it yet. She's touching wood right now, but it'll help. And also I thought that those boxes would then provide more shade to the roots of the plants that are in the polytunnel over winter, over summer, if it's that bit taller. So what about you? What's hot in your garden?
No, hang on. I have a
Oh,
celeriac
go on.
question.
Sorry.
So, first of all, I'm hopeful that my celeriac are growing beneath the ground because they're not sitting proud like yours are. My cousin has sworn by taking the lower leaves off of the celeriac this year. Is that what you do?
No.
No. Okay.
Last year I did, because the bottom or the lower leaves did start to go yellow and I took them off. This year that bed had quite a bit of weed in it, because it's another bed that I'd bought the bags of farmyard manure for. And any bed that I've bought the bags of farmyard manure for have actually suffered with a lot of weed this year. So I intentionally left the lower leaves because it was just acting as a kind of a mulch, it was just blocking the light. So it's helping with weed suppression. But I would have taken the leaves off had they started to die back, but they didn't. They stayed perfectly green and beautiful. And actually they added to the surprise, because when I broke the lower leaves off, they looked even bigger than I thought they were. But no, but I believe that I remember watching Charles Dowding a couple of years ago, and he'd said that it's optional. You can take them off if you want. You can leave them on if you want. It makes no discernible difference to the end result at harvest time. It's personal preference, really.
I think she was taking them off because they were dying back around the base.
Yeah.
But she has said that she feels that's making a difference to how they're bulbing up, but it could be just perspective. But she makes a lovely celeriac curry. She's a big fan of celeriac.
Lovely. I love celeriac.
Your recipe, though, for the carrots, what did you say? So carrots, harissa paste, pine nuts, and on a bed of kale?
Yeah. And do you know what? Delicious. I think I'm going to add a bed of celeriac mash to that. It's one of my favourite meals. I just love roast carrots, whole roast carrots. Just a bit of harissa paste on them.
How long is it going to take you to roast a carrot?
Oh, well, I'm not going to roast one that big, am I? I'm not going to roast the really big ones. No, you'd have to cut those. The pencil thin, well, not as thin as a normal pencil, but that kind of size. For anyone watching on Spotify now, I'm gesticulating very dubiously.
I thought they would be in the oven as long as your roasted tomatoes were in the dehydrator. 36 hours for a roasted
gosh, no. I do them in the air fryer, actually. And then I roast the pine nuts in there with them as well. So, I just love it. Just love it.
I'm going to try
And harissa paste like that is one of the only things that I can have that's a bit spicy that doesn't give me any heartburn.
I love harissa. I'm going to make that for next week so that I can say my verdict on your dish. So my hot for this week is that I am fully embracing autumn.
Wow.
So I have the autumn jumper on.
So
some people are, quite invested in my jumper selection. This is a new one for this year, only purchased last week. So yes, I feel very autumnal. And we've not done our mugs yet, but my mug is quite an autumnal mug. Look, that's a little leaf on the thing, and
Oh,
I've got a little owl and an acorn, and that was from my mum. She bought me
that's
that this
beautiful.
week because she felt like we would be running out of milk soon.
Well, I don't have a mug this week. I actually don't have a hot drink this week. I
What?
have apple and
Water?
rhubarb cordial, and it's
Oh,
it's beautiful. I saw it in the shop, a Robinson's apple and rhubarb
oh,
cordial, and I
hang
thought,
on. I thought you were going to say you made it.
no, but I have started a rhubarb cheong now so that I can have my
Mm,
own rhubarb cordial in the future because this is so subtly flavored but absolutely gorgeous. So, yeah, been
mm.
inspired by Ali at the Right Pair plot. Rhubarb cheong is being
Yes,
made.
I wanted to do it too, but I'm a bit dubious about taking any of my rhubarb now because really you shouldn't be harvesting rhubarb at this point,
No.
should you? But then again, the plants are so established on our plot, I'm sure they would not mind a couple
Well,
of
mine was in the
stalks.
freezer. So I Googled
Okay,
whether you could make it with frozen rhubarb and you can. So I thought,
okay.
I don't really want to make a crumble. I eat enough. I don't want to eat. It's only me that's going to eat a crumble. So I'm going to make a rhubarb crumble because, I know I could make a small one, but I won't. I'll make a big one and then I'll have an excuse
Eat
to
it
eat the
all.
whole lot to myself. So I thought, do you know what? I'm going to make the rhubarb cheong instead. So that's what I've done.
Very good. Yeah, I might have a go. Actually, the freezer rhubarb would be releasing its juices more quickly
Yeah,
as well, so you might get it going.
it actually says it can take up to 3 weeks with fresh rhubarb, but it can be done in as little as 3 days with frozen
Okay.
rhubarb for that very reason.
Well,
It
keep an eye
infuses
because
quicker.
Ali said hers went mouldy.
Oh,
That was
no.
her second batch. She had a successful batch, and I think you've inspired her to have another go anyway. I had beetroot juice this morning, which I was at Liam's and he had bought a carton of it. And I was like, sure, I'll have some. And I tasted it and I was like, look, I'm not just trying to be a grump, but this does not compare to the beetroot juice that I've been making up from the plot. And he was like, he believed it. He believed it. But it's just night and day. So I'm sure when you've made your own rhubarb chong and
Yeah.
having that in water, it'll, blow out the water, that Robinson stuff.
Yes. Yes.
What's not hot in your garden this week then, Claire?
Well, I mean, the garden doesn't look at its hottest at this time of year, does it? You can't say, oh, the pumpkins don't look good, or the squash doesn't look very good, or the runner beans, or I haven't got runner beans, French beans aren't looking the best, because that's just natural dieback. It's the time of year that it's at. But obviously, when you walk around the plot, nothing is looking its best now. And I mean, I guess it's the only thing that hasn't really done well properly though this week is the onions. So the onions that I sowed, the overwintering ones, have yet to germinate. And my sister's germinated in several days. I mean,
Oh,
it is
really?
colder now, but yeah, hers came up very, very quick. I mean, hers are
When did
sort of
she do hers?
only the week before I did mine, but hers have
Really?
been up. Yeah, they came up really quick.
Oh.
So I'm a bit worried because we didn't share the packet of seeds. It is a separate packet of seeds. And so I'm a bit worried that I have a duff packet of seeds because of how quick hers came up. I mean, I have brought them into the house now, hoping that maybe they just needed a little bit extra warmth to just germinate.
Oh,
But they
okay.
shouldn't do. I don't think it's that cold yet outside to be struggling.
I'll do the same because we sowed pretty much at the same
Yeah.
time. And again, these are Japanese sensu onion seed.
Yeah.
Mine also have not come up and they're getting the mossy top. I had a little bit of a disappointment. So this is only a little one because one
Okay.
of my loofahs has gone moldy.
Oh no.
So
You'll be all
it's
right
not,
inside.
I don't know. It was squidgy.
Oh.
So I've discarded. But it's only one of quite a few. And it's not my big
Good.
one. Big one in the home greenhouse is still fine. So that was just a little knot. My bigger knot is that my Taunton kale that I'm looking at right now outside of my window has been got by the caterpillars. And this happened last year. It's being munched. I keep looking at it and thinking I need to remove these caterpillars. But because they're in the front garden, you tend to see it as you're coming in and out of the front door, which is not the time where you're usually like in gardening mode.
No.
And as we know, I neglect my front garden quite a lot because it's supposed to just take care of itself, which for the most part it does. But yes, the caterpillars are back. They were here last year. Last year, I let it get to such a state that it ate the entire plant. And then the caterpillars crawled up my front windows, all the way to the eaves of the bay window and made their little chrysalises and overwintered in the bay. So then I guess this summer they all burst out. The butterflies came straight down onto the kale and laid their eggs. So yes, but I have been good. I've taken off all the leaves that are affected. I just got in this morning. I saw a couple more. I took them straight off, and I'm hoping I can get back on top of the situation, because it was not pleasant to look out of your front window and see caterpillars and caterpillar trails going all the way on.
No, I can imagine. It's the stuff of nightmares, Kerry.
It is a little bit. It was a bit horror movie. But yeah, I've done that. So hopefully going forwards, it won't be such a big problem, and I can save my Taunting cow. It came back last year. I mean, it's the same size this year that it was last, and they devoured the entire thing last year. But it's already been stressed from the white fly and everything else that's been attacking brassicas this year.
Are you not considering moving it to somewhere where you can protect it?
I've got them everywhere. So it's just one of quite a few, because they're so easy to propagate. I take some cuttings, and so I've got at least 3 on the plot. I think I did take out the one in the back garden because it was in the dahlia bed, which is now full of dahlias. So, but there are more. Right, what about our show and tells then for this week, Claire? What have you got to show us?
Well, I've brought something that I've spoken about quite a few times, and I thought I would bring in to show you a birdhouse gourd.
You've harvested one?
No, I haven't. This is the one that fell off.
Oh, yes.
It fell off when we'd had the frosts and the storms, and I've brought it into the house because obviously I don't know how the frost is going to affect it, or the fact that it was sitting on the soil. In fact, I haven't actually cleaned it. You know, you think I'd have done that first. But the reason I brought it in more than anything is because obviously we've been promising to talk about, or I promised to find out what it is we're supposed to be doing with these. And the first thing to notice is not this. Don't take it off yet. They're not ready to be taken off. And this fell off. It would still be on the plant, but it would help me to show what we're supposed to be doing. So I had a bit of a Google. Well, I watched a YouTube video, you know, as you do. And I watched 2 or 3 YouTube videos, hoping that what I'd seen in the first one wasn't what we actually needed to do. But alas, it is. So these are supposed to stay on the plant until the stem turns brown. This won't turn brown. When we harvest them, these will still be green. But the stem, a bit like how you're harvesting pumpkins or any other gourd, you're looking for this stem to go brown. So as you can see, this was not ready. So I don't know if this will do anything now. But I mean, I'm bringing it in the house just to be sure. But when I said that I wanted to give these away as Christmas presents, I mean, I don't quite know what Christmas year I was thinking of, because it's not going to be this year. They take, after you've harvested them, between 6 and 12 months to cure into the birdhouse gourd. So it's really a crop that keeps on giving. Nightmares, headaches, and all sorts. So you basically will be leaving them in to store somewhere, just like you would a pumpkin, in cool storage. I mean, I would not recommend in the house because they will go moldy in the process, but that is perfectly normal. So when they go moldy, do not be alarmed. Do not think that it's not working, because that is what they're supposed to do. And it takes a good while to go through that entire process. You know, the ones that I've got in the polytunnel are huge and they have no sign of browning on the stems. So I'm actually thinking that maybe we don't have a long enough season to be growing these properly. So I'm a little bit worried now whether we'll have success. So I'm going to not grow them next year, because I mean, are we going to get such a hot summer next year as we've had this year? I mean, we can't have had a more perfect summer to have things like this cure sooner. The loofahs, for instance, have cured on the vines this year much earlier than they did last year. And if you can see that the leaves on this, obviously because it's separated from the plant, have died back, you're not looking for this. The plant should actually still look healthy when this has died back to say it's ripe enough to harvest. The vine should be able to go on. And having seen that online is the concern that I've got, that I don't think we've got time now for these, unfortunately.
You've got loads as well, haven't you?
I have.
I've only got one, but it's huge. I mean, it's a birdhouse gourd for like a pterodactyl. It's just absolutely massive.
It's a commune.
I was fiddling about with because it's in with all the runner beans and the Greek gigantes, so I was like harvesting some of those, and I thought at one point that I had cut it.
No.
And I was like, oh, But there it was. It was still hanging. But I have had loads and loads of smaller ones. And
Yeah.
not just late in the season, all season long, but they have come to nothing. It's saying, no, all the energy is going into this
It's going into that
beast of one.
Yeah.
And all the others have just died. I haven't taken them off. They've just died off. But yeah, I'm very pleased to see that I've got this big birdhouse gourd.
Yeah,
but
me too.
We'll both see what comes of them. And if we actually, in the end, 12 months later, still get a birdhouse gourd.
And if we do,
watch
then
this space, people.
Well, exactly. And if we do, then they'll be back on the list for 2027. But I don't want to give up that much space to something that might not work in the long run. So, yeah.
They take up a lot of space.
They do take up a lot of space. So loofahs are definitely on the list every year. They are definitely there, but I'm not sure about these. The jury is out.
Okay. My show and tell is here, and it is a big bowl of sweet chestnuts.
Look at those.
There are some really big ones in here as well. Look at that.
They are huge.
So these aren't conkers. They're not horse chestnuts. These are sweet chestnuts, different tree. Similar looking pod to
Aren't they finer? Don't they have finer spines, really sharp ones on them?
Very sharp.
Yeah.
Yes. So Liam and I have perfected over the years a little technique of getting the sweet chestnuts out. So we get our boots on either side of the pod and you kind of go like this, just stepping on each side until the crack open. And then you can go in with your fingers, but you still have to be careful because they will spike you. But that was a really good harvest this year. Last year, we went a little bit too late. Now, it'll be interesting to know if people have sweet chestnut trees around them, if they're in the parks, because here we have none. We've got loads of conker trees, acorns, but there's just not sweet chestnuts. And it seems mad to me that we have all these horse chestnuts that you can't eat, but not the sweet chestnuts, which we could be, which are edible. But we go to Sherwood Pines in Nottingham, and the forest there has loads of sweet chestnut trees. But we went too late last year, and the squirrels have got everything. But this year, of course, we keep hearing is a mast year.
Yes.
So there's lots of nuts and berries and fruits around. And it was a bumper crop out there. So there was enough for the squirrels, enough for us. And I have got a nice pile there, which I need now to process, which, if I remember correctly, because I am thinking 2 years ago, there's a boiling stage before you do the roasting stage. And I still, back to freezers again, I still have a big bag full in the freezer from, it wouldn't be last year, it would be the year before. But what I was wondering is whether I would take those out of the freezer, because the dehydrator is still out from doing stuff last week. Dehydrate those ones and make them into a chestnut flour. And then these ones can be the next fresh lot. So that'll have to go on my list for something to do next week as well.
I don't think I've ever seen a sweet chestnut tree.
No? Okay.
Don't think I've ever seen one.
It's bizarre to me that they wouldn't be planted in parks.
Yeah. I mean, we've got lots of nature reserves around us because it was a mining community. So there's 3 country parks and nature reserves that all link in directly from the farm. We can go for a nice 10-mile walk and we haven't been we have to cross a couple of roads to get from one park to the next. But that's it, because it's ex-mining community. And there's loads of trees. They've had a huge planting thing on there, but I don't think there's any sweet chestnuts. I've never seen any, never.
Well, just don't mistake a conker for a sweet chestnut.
We have those. We have those on the farm. No.
But you can use conkers, and I have collected conkers before, not only to put in the corners of the room to repel spiders. Sure, that's a myth, but we've all been there. But to make washing detergent. So they have soap in them, or whatever the chemical for soap is. And
did not know that.
Yeah, so you can kind of boil those up and it creates a soap, and you can use that for laundry. So when I was very strict zero waste a few years ago, I did collect a lot of conkers to do that. And then they ended up just staying in the bag in the pantry and going all moldy. So I never got around to actually doing it. I think I may have done it once, but it's a lot of time and effort to go through to make a little batch of washing liquid that you would need to use quite quickly. So I haven't been doing that again, but love the sweet chestnuts. And of course, once you start roasting them, it just smells like Christmas.
Yes.
My other show and tell just behind me. I mean, this is part of my knot as well, is that the tomatoes are not giving up. They are continuing to produce. But on top of that, I've got this beautiful sea lavender. And we were talking last week about
Gorgeous.
drying flowers. And this is from Liam's dad. He sent me Liam had gone to visit him last weekend and he sent me back a little bouquet of
It's beautiful.
sea lavender. Yeah, it is. It dries so well as well. And I had it on the old plot. It just popped up. I hadn't sown it. And I've been meaning to grow it again. Status, I think, is its proper name. But if that's wrong, we'll pop it on the screen what is correct. Okay. Any daft things this week, Claire? Come on,
Well, I've done I've done a few.
Oh.
I've done a few. So, do you remember me moaning that no one wanted to have the rye and vetch seeds?
Yes.
Well, I did then get 4 emails. I didn't have 4 packets of seed. I had to go out and buy some more seed because I didn't want to let anybody down. So I bought 4 packets of seeds and I parcelled them up and I gave them to Duncan, who was going to the local agricultural merchant because they have a post office within it. And he said he'd post them. And I thought, brilliant. That means he's paying for it. Great. Win-win all round. So I gave him these parcels and I never asked him whether he posted them. I didn't get any feedback whether people had received them. I didn't get any feedback to say they hadn't received anything yet. So I just thought, it's fine. It's fine. Then his car went for an MOT last Friday. And the garage phoned up to say the car it failed its MOT, but we won't go into that. And there was these 4 packets of seeds underneath the front seat. So in between making the mile journey from our home to the post office, Duncan had completely forgotten about them. I don't want to talk about his driving style, how they ended up underneath the front seat. We don't want to know, but there they stayed. And so, yeah, 2 of the envelopes were broken. So I need to re-envelope those up. But the other 2, he did post straight off. So 2 people have now received their seeds. The other 2, they are going to be posted this afternoon. I apologise. I've reparceled them up. But yeah, so that's one daft thing, although it's not really my daft thing. And the second daft thing is I was making jam and I was going to the sink with the AirPods in. I walked to the sink and as I leant over the sink, it dropped out of my ear, bounced on the side and went in the sink. So it's currently in a bag with some of those silica gel sachets that I bought that I'm using for the dried goods. Will they work again? I don't know, which is why I've got these headphones in that keep dropping out of my ears because they don't fit my ears. But that's why I'm wearing those today.
Yeah, these drop out my ears all the time. But it's funny you should tell that story, Claire. And I've not told you this, but I did exactly the same thing yesterday.
No.
I was on a FaceTime call with the family while I was at Liam's and they were being quite loud. And so I'd put his earpods in and I was doing the washing up while I was talking to him and it fell straight into the washing up bowl. It must happen to so many people, I would have thought. I have tiny ears. Do you have tiny ears?
Apparently, I mean, I shoot. So when I went to you have these ear things molded for when you're shooting instead of having to wear the big over the head things. Because when you've got the gun up here, you're knocking the thing off your ears. So you need the thing molded in your ears. It's better. So, yeah, they said when they did mine that I had very small ear canals. So I do struggle with headphones falling out of my ears.
Yeah, I do struggle when we're filming and having these in. I need to get some big ones really to go over my head because, yeah, they kind of hurt my ears. But anyway, I put it straight back in. I dried it off on the tea towel, put it straight back in, and it seemed to work. So I did tell him that I'd done it. But yes, I've not been good like you and put it with silica gels or rice or anything. I just popped it straight back in the case. I'm like, it's fine.
Yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, one of them's all right because only one dropped out. So it's not like I won't be able to use them. But yeah, I don't know. But it was one of those no moments. And then I Googled what should I do? Will they be okay? Well, it was not what should I do. That was obvious what to do, but it was will it be okay? You know, I didn't know if they were waterproof to any way, shape or form. And its first suggestion was, if it's fell in water, take it out quickly. No, of course I've left it in there.
Bobbing about. Okay, well, my daft thing, I've got a kind of daft thing, show and tell and a bargain all together. And it's my thing that I had promised to do last week. So last week I promised to buy some more jars and make some more stuff. with my mountain of tomatoes. And I made the decision to make ketchup. So I did buy my jars. And so the first bargain of this week this is from Pammy. She said Dunelm. No, hang on. I can't remember if this was Pammy or not, but one person said Dunelm had 20% off their jars. Okay. So Mum and I traveled to Dunelm one evening last week to buy jars. I told her it was for something else because she wouldn't let me go if it was for jars. But when we were there, it was too late. And I bought 14 of these mini jars,
Wow.
the Kilner ones. So they were 20% off, and that worked out so much cheaper than if you were to buy them in bulk through Amazon. Now, it was Pammy who said that Frasier's have got the pint Kilner jars, six for £6, which was the exact same deal that I got at Sports Direct, and lots of people took advantage of. So if you're still in need of jars, and I have ordered 2 more packs, then Frasier's is the place to go. And what's in these jars is my ketchup. And the reason that this ketchup is a Daft Thing is because it took me 9 hours to make this ketchup. I started it at 7 a.m. on Saturday, thinking it wouldn't take me that much longer than all the chopped tomatoes that I've done. Well, no, alas. It asked me to chop 24 pounds of tomatoes, which I started doing. And when I got to like £10, realized that this was going to be much more of a mission than I thought. I had to have 2 enormous saucepans. So my usual big saucepan that I would do tomatoes in, plus the crock pot that I would do the sterilizing and the water bathing. Both of those were full of tomatoes. And yeah, it took absolutely forever to boil them down to get a nice consistency for tomato ketchup. But I have to say, and this is a hot as well, I'm covering all the bases today, it tastes amazing, Claire. I am so pleased. I took a jar to Liam's last night. We had it with vegan sausages and veg, and we were both like, oh my God, this ketchup is amazing. We had this lovely dinner, and the star of the show on the dinner was the ketchup.
Ketchup.
So I could not be happier.
I'm going to guess you have the recipe there. So are you going to do a little article for the website for the ketchup recipe?
I will not, because I would just be plagiarizing, because I followed exactly the recipe for the tomato ketchup that is on the Ball Jar website. And you do have to be a little bit more cautious. Like I was just doing chopped tomatoes before. So it's just chopped tomatoes. You know, you can manage the acidity with adding the citric acid or the lemon juice, as we discussed in length last week, didn't we?
We did.
But when you're doing a sauce, it's slightly different. And these, because they're a mix of sugar and vinegar, they didn't need water bathing for quite so long. If I'd had to because I had to water bath in 2 batches as well. So if I'd had to do 45 minutes each for each batch, I would have been, honestly, it was almost all day already. But these only took 15 minutes to water bath. So I did those in 2. But yeah, to be on the safe side, follow your recipe to the letter and do the water bathing. And the other top tip was the recipe was for pint jars, but I wanted them in the cute little jars.
Yeah.
When you're processing, don't halve the time for doing a smaller jar. You do it exactly the same size for the bigger jar. So if you ever size down on jars, same processing time. But yeah, really pleased with that. And
well done.
It's given me the confidence to try some other things now, because I continue to be inundated with tomatoes. So I should, when these next lot of jars arrive, I'll be doing some pasta sauce, I think.
Excellent.
But, yeah. And I also have ketchup now for like at least the next year. I did 14 little jars, 1 big jar, and then I got enough left over to make 4 jars that were just for the fridge to use up quickly. So they weren't water bathed. But I shall, if we meet up soon, Claire, I shall bring you some. I bet you don't like ketchup. What am I saying?
No, of course I don't.
Of course you don't. Of course you
Well,
don't.
the family do. They love ketchup. Okay. I don't
send
like
some
it.
for Duncan and Isabel. Okay. Well, I guess that brings us to our main event, unless you've got a bargain of the week, Claire.
No, I mean, the only thing that I've done this week and bought is I have done my King Seeds order. So my sister came over on Saturday and she logged into her account. So I got the really
is a bargain.
Yes, so I got the really good discount, and I have ordered my seeds. And, it's quite funny because I was about to say I've ordered the staples for the garden, which is what our main event is about anyway. So I haven't got all of my seeds. There's some tomatoes that, I've saved some seeds from this year, hopefully, but there's a few that I want to buy that they didn't have in the King's catalogue. So I'll go to Tomato Revolution for those. But apart from that, I think I've got all of my seeds now for next year. So it wasn't a bargain because I spent £86, but it is a bargain when I think how much that would have cost at normal prices for me. So well done.
You can keep me to this, Claire. Everybody can keep me accountable to this. I'm not going to buy any tomato seeds for next year. I'm just going to use what I've got, especially as we've established, I think all tomatoes taste the same. So I'm not going to get any new varieties. Don't you be tempting me with varieties unless you buy them and grow the plants and then give them to me. I will be happy to take those on.
I want you to grow cherry brandy wine, which is a cherry tomato.
Yeah, I've got that. Oh,
I didn't think you had that.
No, sorry. I thought you were going to say
big ones.
Yeah.
No. The cherry brandy wine is a cherry tomato. And Duncan preferred that to honeycomb. He preferred it to sun gold the first year.
It's a yellow one.
No, it's red. Duncan would say that he is the same as you. A tomato is a tomato. But I got him to taste test tomatoes. He didn't rate the black strawberry much at all. He was like, it's okay, but it's just, it was beautiful looking
prolific.
tomato.
Yeah. And very pretty, yeah.
He liked the indigo cherry drop. He said it was okay. It got more flavour to it. But as soon as he had the cherry brandy wine, now this was his favourite tomato from last year, and he put it in his mouth and he went, this tastes really different. Oh, this is nice. And he said, and given that he's not a connoisseur, he said, it tastes like wine. And I thought, how bizarre, because it's called brandy wine. And he said it was such a rich taste. I mean, he doesn't drink, so I don't know if he actually really knows what wine tastes like. But he said it was a very different taste, and it's still his favourite tomato. So you need to grow that next year. Well, I need that to see if it'll rival.
So. Well, I won't say no to anybody sending me seeds, Claire, but I'm not going to buy any. Okay.
No.
And because tomato seed is really expensive as well when you buy from, the reputable specialist growers. And we're also going to talk about stars of the garden today, so we can talk about some of those as well. Shall we get to our main event then?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Yep.
So this week we decided to think about, not just because we knew Claire was going to have this enormous harvest of the absolute staples of the garden, but we hadn't teased this last week because we hadn't really decided what we wanted to do this week, and we were throwing around some ideas, and then we were like, we talked about, we bring up, don't we, the Birdhouse gourds and the loofahs and things like this, and we get very excited about these. But the staples of the garden are also so super important. They are the bread and butter of the vegetable garden. But more unusual things keep the excitement going. So there is some overlap between those two things, and we recognize that some of the staples can also be stars. And I think your reactions to when you were harvesting potatoes, Claire, is testament to that. So these two things can overlap. And indeed, I think 89% of our viewers in our poll this week said that they like to stick to the staples, but they do like an odd star, something a bit more unusual to keep the interest going and try new things. So of the staples that we sort of surveyed, we had onions and potatoes coming out top, and actually onions pipped potatoes by 1%, which I thought was interesting. I thought potatoes would have got that. They got 31%, but onions got 32%. But there was a comment from Gary about potatoes, about them taking up space. Now, I thought this was interesting to start with because, one, your potato harvest was incredible. Those were in the ground, but only a small part of one bed. And obviously you've also got buckets of potatoes. So having done this harvest this week, what's your feeling like? Potatoes in the ground, potatoes in buckets, potatoes taking up space, and also the main crop versus the second earlies, because you also had an amazing Charlotte crop, as did I.
I did. Yeah. I mean, Charlottes are just incredibly reliable, aren't they? And I think they are the only early potatoes that I will grow. I mean, I say that I'm going to grow Red Duke of York again, but they'll be in early buckets probably. But 3 seed potatoes, I had to go back and look at the video and see and just check that I'd only planted 3 potatoes. I was pretty certain it was either 3 or 4, and even if it had been 4, it would have still been an amazing return. But if you think that you put 3 potatoes in a bucket, a 30-litre bucket, I mean, you couldn't physically get that many potatoes out of a 30-litre bucket. They wouldn't have fitted in a 30-litre bucket anyway. There was that many of them. So the return in the ground was out of this world. And it was really interesting to see, because obviously I did dig a trench. I did earth them up. I could have probably earthed them up a bit more if they hadn't have been right at the end of the bed. When I was trying to earth up a bit later on, the soil was just falling out of the bed. But they were they were out of this world, weren't they? I mean, I have genuinely never seen a potato as big as the sarpomeras that I was harvesting. I mean, I'm mind blown. That was the title of my video. I was just absolutely mind blown. And I wanted to weigh them, but we've been using them and I've given some away. So I don't actually have them all to physically weigh how much return I got on 3 seed potatoes. That's something that I think I'm going to perhaps do next year. So I've got more of an idea of the cost that would have been to buy.
Because Mayu did that last year, didn't she?
Yeah.
She weighed everything that she got out of the ground so she could compare the varieties. Now, when you say you had a trench, that was across the width, not the length of one of your raised beds. So
because that's the only space I had.
How long that is?
It's only 1.2 meters wide. The beds, they're all 1.2 by
in a row.
3 potatoes. Yeah.
And what kind of gap between the next crop? What did you grow with them in that
French
bed?
beans.
Okay.
French beans were the other side of that. They didn't do very well, but I don't think it was because of the potatoes.
Those potatoes were taking on the nutrients.
I don't think it was the potatoes, but I dug the trench as deep as I could, and I'd really hit the harder clay pan underneath the bed, and I put them in the bottom of it, and I put fresh, loose compost on top, but it was bulk bag compost. It wasn't bags of compost from the garden centre. It was big bulk bag. And I also added in the box of potato fertiliser. Well, it's root veg fertiliser. So I did sprinkle some of that in there. But that's it. I didn't feed them again during the season at all. But I did keep earthing them up. And towards the end, I hadn't got any more bulk bag stuff. So I think there is a bag of compost put right on the top, just because a few of them were, you could see them getting green. They were just starting to poke through the surface. So right late on in the season, I did have to top it up a bit. But, it's quite funny. You don't realise how deep your trench is. It's sort of about, I can't put it in the camera. It was about that deep, really. By the time I was digging for them, I forgot how deep it started off. And they just got better and better the deeper I went. And obviously that makes sense, doesn't it? Because the ones at the bottom would have started first, wouldn't they? Yeah. They will have grown more than the ones at the top. But there's no comparison. In terms of the return on them, there is no comparison to the buckets, to the ground. That said, I will still be growing them in buckets moving forward as well. But I'll have more in the ground, and I think I'll just have maybe 2-3 buckets just so I've got my Christmas potatoes.
I was going to say it's more about storing then, isn't it?
Yeah. And then I could take them out of the ground and I could put them in buckets with compost in them. There's no reason why I can't store them out of the ground. And I might try that next year as an experiment. Take some out of the ground, re-put them in a bucket with soil and see if they keep, as well as ones grown in the buckets and just left behind. But in the ground for me, I have the space. So it's so much easier. And I can't say there's less watering because we've all had to do a lot of watering this year with the season that we've had. But in a normal season, obviously, there's less watering needed to be done, isn't there, than there is in the buckets. But yeah, definitely. They are a firm staple for me.
Well, I'm very excited to see what mine will be like because I have grown in the ground my Steezer.
Yeah.
I'm glad that came to me. Never remember the name of that variety because I don't know if that's a very unusual variety. It's not one that I hear people talk about very much. So Steezer is what I've done in the ground. And then I've got some King Edwards in buckets. Yours were Sarpomira, which I did do last year. I did those in buckets. They were fine. They didn't blow me away or anything. But I've earthed up with the rabbit bedding and the grass clippings rather than compost. So that will be a factor to bear in mind. And of course, I don't water. But I have earthed up again recently because, like you were saying, they were rising to the top. And we talked about this in a previous episode about taking potatoes up sooner rather than later now because the pests will be coming. You'd got a little bit of scab on those Sarpomira, but not too much.
No, no. And I had two that were damaged, that I could see were damaged. So that's what made me, I hadn't actually intended to harvest all of them, but it did make me think. And actually, the ground was quite wet there. And, you know, you've been asking me all season, what is the secret? Why are things doing so
Yes.
well? And
You've
I
got a
know that
theory.
well, I have a few theories. I'm not so sure about the one I've talked to you about, but um,
Share
um,
it, Claire. Share it.
well, we have a local reservoir next to us. It's like an underground, they call it a reservoir, but it's actually just more of a water storage facility. And a few years ago, the water had exceeded the levels for safe drinking of nitrates because it's surrounded by farmland. And we all had letters telling us we had to boil it, but it was fine to put on your vegetables and all sorts. You could brush your teeth in it, but if you were drinking it, to boil it first. Well, I'm not sure that boiling it strips the nitrates, but either way, the farming community was blamed. So I did wonder, you know, I haven't tested the water. Do we have high nitrates? Is my water an actual feed as well if the nitrate levels are higher than the national
Mm.
average, even if they are below safe standards? Well, the other theory that I have is, you know, that plot floods in winter, but not an obvious flood. You know, when it gets to planting the garlic normally at the end of November, you saw last year, I'm trying to plant it, I've hit the water table. So we have a high water table here. And Pammy pointed out to me when I was talking to her, and I was like, you're right, I do have a high water table. So actually, in early spring, when the top surface was drying out, but if the roots have gone down deep, I think mine were in the water table. Because look at those potatoes. They were quite damp. There was another reason why I picked them out. We haven't really had rain for the last
No.
week. We had it the weekend before, and actually the soil was quite wet in that area. So I think, you know, my high water table is probably, in all honesty, the thing that helps more than anything. Obviously, I regularly water as well, but I think all combined together, because
Yeah.
I don't do lots. You know, a couple of times in the year, I put some seaweed feed on after heavy rain, did it after the rain, put the seaweed feed down. But 3 times maybe in the season,
Mm.
that's not, I know it's probably more than what you may have done with yours, but it's not a lot, is it? It's not like I'm going out there feeding them every week either. So I do think there's inherently something in the ground. Yes, I add manure into the ground. Yes, there's been fresh compost in there. So there's not one single thing that I've done that's a secret.
You do the blood fish and bone as well, and chicken
When I
manure
plant
when
things,
you
yeah,
plant. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But I mean, I put the seaweed feed down when I plant for fertilizers. Okay, we started with potatoes. Obviously, there's more stars, and we'll perhaps go to onion and garlic next. But we got our list of what are the staples of the garden from the Dig for Victory plots. So I got one of my books out, so I can just show a Dig for Victory type garden. Am I getting that on camera, Claire?
You are indeed, you are.
There we go. So I thought this would be a good way to determine what is a staple and what is a more unusual kind of star of the garden, even though we might have got used to planting some of these things. Because I think in one of my polls, I put squash down as one of the things that I would consider a staple, but that's not what you would really be growing.
No,
Marrows, so kind of summer squash, but not really the kind of pumpkins that we grow now. I might be wrong about that. People can tell me in the chat if I'm wrong.
I think that staples are relative to what you want to grow anyway, aren't they? You know,
Yes,
my
but
staples
we,
might not be
we
your
can't go by
staples.
that.
No, but I mean, there's a generic list, I guess. There is a
Yes.
generic list. But when I was thinking of this topic, I was thinking about what I consider the staples of my garden because it's all about me. All about
Well,
me.
I'm doing the same, Claire, because I am making this list, aren't I, for next year, and I mean, ground cherries is not ground cherries, Cape gooseberries, because I prefer the Cape gooseberries to the ground cherries, are going to be on my list of must-haves for next year, but I don't think many people would consider those a staple of the garden. So the staples that we're going with are onions. It didn't say garlic, but we're going to parcel those in together. Beans and peas, carrots and parsnips, tomatoes, cucumbers, marrow, cabbage and butternut squash. Oh, and Swedes. Claire, you're Swede. Let's start with the Swede. That was amazing as well. That was as big as the celeriac, right? A little bit smaller?
Not quite. It was good, wasn't it? That variety is
really
marrying.
Good.
There are some small ones in there as well, but they've done so well. They've done so well. If you remember, my first crop of those was eaten by pigeons because I didn't cover them. So the first crop failed. So they were a
Oh, so
second
these were sown
sowing.
later.
Yeah,
Oh,
second
wow.
sowing. And I don't like buying swede from a shop. I love growing swede because it's so easy to peel. It's so easy to chop. But, you get them from the supermarkets and you can't peel them, you can't chop them. Same with butternut squashes, isn't it? They're so much easier when you've grown them yourself. So, I love root vegetables. So, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Is there
it's a
anything on
huge
that list
hit.
that I just read out that you wouldn't grow?
I don't think there's anything that I wouldn't grow. I mean, there's things I wouldn't eat on that
Marrow.
list,
Do
but
you grow marrow? Did I ask you
do you
that
know
before?
what? I'm going to grow one next year.
Oh, you are.
I
Okay.
love marrow soup. So I didn't grow marrows this year. I know the courgettes turned into marrows, but I like the Tiger Cross, which I grew last year. So you could harvest them as a courgette, but they are ones that are supposed to grow onto a marrow as
Okay.
well. And I'll be doing that twofold. One, because I got first prize in the horticultural show with it last year as a marrow, because it's such a uniform shape. It's beautiful. But I loved the marrow soup. Absolutely loved the marrow soup. But the courgettes I've grown this year, if I've let them get big enough to be a marrow, yes, I've been able to use them, but they just didn't seem to have quite the same taste. And they
I was
seemed
going
a
to
little
say,
bit
what is
kind
the
of
difference
seedy
in
in the middle.
taste?
There isn't, is there, in
Oh,
theory? A marrow is just a big courgette. It gets to a certain size, and well, it's a marrow now. But the Tiger Cross one is so beautiful to look at anyway, but it just seems to make a really nice marrow that was still soft and tender. And yeah, so
so
I am
that would
growing
be
them
the
next year.
difference, that when you
Yeah,
grow it large, it retains its kind of structure. And I guess the seeds wouldn't, because you grow a courgette too big and it's all seedy. Does the
yeah,
marrow keep
no.
its seeds small?
I found that it did. I didn't
Okay.
find I had to cut as much out in the middle. So I
Mm.
loved it. And I wish I'd grown it again this year, but alas, I'm going to next year.
Well, I don't grow marrow, but I do love growing courgettes. I think I've not had much success with cabbages. Bit more this year with the lovely pixie cabbages.
Oh,
Really enjoyed growing
gorgeous.
those. Swedes I've never had much luck with, so I'm going to try the Marion variety then. But everything else, yeah, I feel like I wouldn't want my garden to be without those.
No.
Maybe slightly less tomatoes, but
I'm
just
going to
this year.
remember this next year. I still don't think you'll only stick to 30 plants next year.
I'm determined, but I also suspect that might be the case. But I don't know, looking through that list, I'm thinking about what amount of the growing space that I have I dedicate to these crops in particular, because I think I probably give quite a lot of my allotment space to the
Yeah.
so-called stars or more unusual sorts of vegetables. How do you feel you divide up your space?
I would say there must be 2/3 of my plot at least given over to the staples. But then obviously to me, I would add things on there. So sweet corn is a staple as far as I'm concerned.
Mm,
Yes, it can also be a star of the garden, but I can't imagine not growing sweet corn, which isn't on that list.
yeah.
And next year, I'm actually considering not growing dwarf French beans.
Okay. Why?
I'm going to just grow climbing French beans.
Because of the
Because
yield?
well, yes, and also because seem to find when I grow the dwarf ones that I miss them because they
Mm,
tend to be in a bed with other things that have kind of crowded over them, and then you don't really notice them. Or if there's any weed pressure in the bed, they get hidden a bit more. I find that you can't miss the structure of the climbing French beans. And whilst I did miss the perfect harvest window for them this year, it wasn't because it was just not a normal time for me. They were ready right when my mother-in-law was in hospital, and I just wasn't doing anything on the garden properly. So they took a back seat. So next year I am going to really focus on climbing beans,
Do
French
you
beans and drying beans.
want to master the French beans?
I do.
Because one of our that's a weird segue, but one of our questions for this week was what you got the most enjoyment out of in terms of the garden. I can't remember all the options I put now, but one of them was mastering a crop, getting it right,
Yeah.
and 53% agreed that that was the thing that they wanted to do in the garden. And I think you get a lot of satisfaction when you're just like, right, I've got that down now. I know what I'm doing
Yeah.
with that particular
Yeah.
crop.
And I think, funnily enough, I would bet that the thing that people want to master is a staple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It'll be something like, I can't grow carrots. I can't grow straight carrots. I can't grow straight parsnips. My lettuce always gets eaten. My cabbages always bolt. You know, I think
Yeah.
it's going to be a staple because that is what we start off with, really, isn't it? Generally speaking. And so, yeah, we want to master these things, don't we? Definitely.
I would
Definitely.
like to master carrots next year. I haven't had a great carrot harvest ever. I've had carrots and they've been fine. And I love growing carrots. I mean, one of the things about staples, and this came up in some of the comments, was that a lot of the staples are the cheapest things to buy in the
Yeah.
supermarket. And I feel we've addressed this before because we have both said that we don't care. Pulling a carrot, there's nothing like pulling a carrot. There's nothing like digging up potatoes. It's just the most fun you can have
Yeah.
in the garden. So we are all on board for growing those things. But it is something to bear in mind when you're short on space and things like potatoes are a big space taker. If they are super cheap in the supermarket,
Yeah.
then you might want to swap those out.
Doesn't make
For something
financial
else.
sense. If I had a
Yeah.
very small growing space, then I actually not certain that I would grow any vegetables, maybe with the exception of asparagus.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'd grow any veg. I'd grow fruit, soft fruits.
Well, I was going to say about
because
fruit because
that's
we've been
what is
focusing on veg.
expensive. Yeah.
Yeah, but we have fruits that are staples. So I would call the strawberry staples, blackberries, black currants are kind of staple fruits. But I think it was Gary, he had a whole list of weird fruits like the jostaberry, like the chokeberry and Saskatoon, which I had on the old plot and wish I'd brought across, but I would have brought a load of bindweed with it. But all these kind of weird fruits, I am all for those. I love those. I guess even blueberries, because in this country, you would consider those quite a
And they're so
unusual
expensive.
thing.
You know, a punnet of strawberries, a punnet of blueberries, raspberries, blackberries. They are exceedingly expensive for how much you buy. So, you know, if you've got a small space, it makes perfect financial sense. If you're doing it to try and save money, the financial sense is to go out and buy the blueberry bushes, the raspberries, the things like that. I mean, I won't grow blackberries. Absolutely will not grow blackberries. I love blackberries, but I won't grow them. We've got miles and miles of hedgerows on the farm. I can just go and pick blackberries to my heart's content. Do I? No. So maybe if I grew them, I'd eat more because they would be there. It's just one of those things you take for granted. And actually, they are probably the things that have struggled the most this year. The wild blackberries and raspberries that we can get, they haven't been as good. Yeah, they haven't been as good. I mean, the hedgerows were dying back. I think the birds were maybe particularly hungry as well. And so they pecked at them even before, you know, they were ready. But yeah, I won't grow them. But to me, that's where the biggest saving is in growing fruits.
Yeah. And actually, that's where you're doing quite a few unusual kind of things in fruit trees as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to do more. I don't know where I'm going to put them, but I want to do more.
Did you buy a meddler?
I have a meddler, yes. It has one meddler on it.
Oh, how lovely. It's not my meddler. This is in the community orchard, so definitely not my meddler. But I'm the only one who seems to go and forage from it. And I'm very excited because that is absolutely covered. And I think it was Geraldine who mentioned meddler. So she put that as one of her stars, and she's going to try and make my meddler honey that I talked about last week.
Lovely.
So let's go through some of these stars. And although the vast majority of people in the polls were like, staples, it's all about the staples. In all the comments, people only wanted to talk about the stars. So I think that says something, doesn't it, about like how we really do want to rely on these kind of staple crops, but the excitement is often about the stars. So one of the big ones, and you said you didn't have too many stars in your garden, Claire, but you've got this one, and it's ochre.
Yeah.
So Kathleen is growing ochre for the first time this year. She's also growing a toad. So we'll put that on the screen so you can see the toad that's coming up in her garden. But she's growing ochre. So what's your feeling about the ochre? Is it worth it? Is it just a novelty? How many years have you been growing it now?
Well, this is my second year growing the ochre. I will always grow it. Is it worth it in terms of would you substitute potatoes for it? Because that's what it's labelled as a potato substitute, isn't it? No, because you're not going to get the yield back on okra that you would on potatoes. Not a hope in hell's chance. But I still like it. I mean, we mainly ate ours on Christmas dinners and New Year's dinner. We left it for something different to have on those roasted. And I absolutely love them. The family, to be fair, couldn't taste the difference between those and potatoes. I thought they had a very unique lemony taste, and maybe you taste that more if you have them raw. But I'd have to grow it. For the plant itself, the foliage alone, it is absolutely beautiful. The harvest is nice, but is it worth it? Not really. Probably
You've had
not.
now a flower though, because we talked, did we say last week about it hadn't flowered, but yours has now?
Yeah, they have started flowering. They have. It's the cost to start them off, isn't it? I mean, it's an investment the first time. So it cost me £30 for 6 tubers, and it's been great to be able to give those okras away to other people now to spare them that money. And I know I've mentioned that before, because I think not knowing if you like something when you're picking a star to grow and you think, well, do I even like it? Because I've never seen it in a shop. I've never tasted it. It's a big gamble to then spend £30 on 6 tubers of something you've never even tasted. And I mean, obviously, if you like potatoes, you're going to like it. So there's nothing to dislike about it, but it's still a big risk. So it's nice to give them away. And I feel like that's mainly what I do. I grow it to have a couple of meals for us, and then enough left to grow again another year, and then give some away as well.
Yeah. I think at Real Seeds, I'm sure they give you 3 or 4 tubers for about £9 or £10. It's probably gone up a little bit. So it's maybe not quite that expensive, but I am tempted now. All this money that I'm going to save on not buying new tomato varieties this year, I might buy a few more, because I've been growing my stock of okra, but I haven't got the orange okra.
No, I don't.
I've got the one that's like yellow with pink eyes. I've got a pinky blush one, which is beautiful, and I've got just a yellow one, but I haven't got the orange. And so sometimes it's a bit of a potluck depending on Real Seeds harvest. So I think, was it last year or the year before, you just got what they'd got, whereas if they've got a good harvest, you can choose your actual varieties. So I might treat myself this year. Okay, so that was okra. I had this was Amanda. Sorry, I'm trying to read my own handwriting. Amanda said about mashed potato squash, and I had kind of got squash in the staples, because like you're saying, squash to me is an absolute staple, but I recognize that that's not probably the same for all. So she was doing mashed potato squash, which you've done before, but did you do mashed potato or baked potato? And are they the same thing? Because I suspect they are.
Yes, they're going to taste the same. They're not. They don't look the same. So the baked potato thing. No, the mashed potato one that I'm growing has a white skin. The baked potato has a browny skin. So it is a darker colour. So they do look different. Then. Yeah, I've got mashed. And I think I've got 6 or 7 plants this year. I will say that is too many.
That's a lot for you.
But I didn't get many last year. So because no one else wanted them, I kept trying to give these plants away. No one needed any spare mashed potato plants. I thought I'd have no trouble on the local pages, community pages, but no one was interested. So I just put them all in. But obviously squash is one thing that's done really well for me in the summer. So they've enjoyed the sun, and obviously they've enjoyed the plentiful watering that I've been giving them. I might actually start harvesting them this week, because they are really dying back now. I haven't really paid attention to see whether the stems look like they're sort of, proper storage kind of stage. But, there's loads. I would say over 30.
Wow.
Easily.
You're going to be eating so much mash this year.
Yeah.
You're going to have potatoes, celeriac, mashed potato squash.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's the funny thing, that potato harvest was so good. We don't eat that many potatoes.
Yeah,
I'm not a huge potato eater.
But I love potatoes, but I couldn't get through the amount that I grew last year. No. I don't know what it'll be like this year, because I wasn't expecting to crop as many Charlottes as I did.
We give them away to the family. So it's nice to be able to give them a box of veg. And, when you're talking about giving boxes of veg away to people, they want the staples. Generally, unless they're growing them. And then, yes, they might want the okra or an asparagus plant spare if you've grown one. But if you're giving a box of veg to someone to take home with them to eat, they want the staples. They want the potatoes, the carrots, the peas. They're not getting them. You know, you don't spend all that time shelling peas to give a bag away, do you? But, you know, they'll take the green beans, the runner beans. They'll take all of that from you, and the parsnips, most definitely. But they're not going to take the ocker. They're not going to
No.
take the celeriac if they don't know what it is. You know, most people are like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what to do with it. But yeah.
I've heard this. Was it Ali who, when she had a bit of a tomato glut, put some of them outside on the street, and like all the red ones went, but all the unusual colours ones, nobody
Yeah.
wanted those. I
Yeah.
had to get rid of some of my tomatoes, and the family finally said that they wanted some. So I gave 3 bags away. And it was funny on Saturday morning when I was dropping my earpod into Sunday, dropping my earpod into the sink when I was talking to them. They were all doing cooking with my tomatoes. So that was lovely. They were making tomato soup, and my sister was doing them roasted for on top of sourdough bread, because Mark didn't have a great tomato harvest this year. So it's like, fine, I've got tons. We can
I've
share.
grown enough for us all. Yeah. But funnily enough, though, when I've had friends come to the plot, so I've had friends that have said, if you've got any spare veg, you would like to have it. And I'm like, well, you can have it, but you've got to come and pick it. And I do that not because I think it's too much effort for me to pick it, but I think that they would enjoy picking their own vegetables anyway. And they did. My friend Julie came. She was harvesting potatoes with me. She had the first Charlottes that came up. And she was wowed when she went into the polytunnel because, you know, you go into a shop, you buy red tomatoes. Occasionally you see yellow cherry tomatoes in packets, don't you? But you don't see coloured tomatoes, all the different sizes and shapes and things.
Beef steaks like this, yeah.
Exactly. And so when she walked into the polytunnel, she was like, I didn't know you could get a black tomato. I didn't know that they came orange. I didn't know that they came looking like the flame tomato that you've got, or the stripes like my sunrise tomato. She was honestly, again, blown away by it. And that she wanted them then. When she saw them on the plants, she wanted them. But I think you're right. If you left them out for someone to pick, they were going to pick what they used to having. Yeah. But it's the complete opposite if you've got hens. So we don't have hens here anymore. But when we used to have hens and we used to leave eggs out for people to pick, they didn't want the brown eggs, the normal kind of egg that you would see in a supermarket. They would take the white eggs or the green eggs, or blue as they're actually technically called, but they look green. And they would always want those colours. They never wanted to take the bog standard eggs that you could buy in the supermarket. But then when it comes to vegetables, they don't want the purple carrots, they want the orange carrots. Do you know what I mean? It's quite strange, isn't it? The different novelty.
Talking of different coloured staples, so it was Lost on the Plot said about the Heidi red potatoes, which I did grow one year, but they didn't grow for me. But I'd done a little bucket of red and blue, so the Heidi red and the salad blue for my nephew, and he had grown those in a little bucket. I gave him a bucket of potato plants for his birthday, these kids, and they were great. They grew, and so they got the red potatoes and the blue ones, but I didn't get the red. I did enjoy growing the blue ones, but that one I did chalk up to novelty, and I won't do again.
I couldn't imagine it on a plate.
I just can't imagine.
Really. Yeah. Because, I mean, I think I've already mentioned this before, haven't I, that I cooked the purple carrots, the purple sun carrots in the Instant Pot. So we did have purple potatoes that week because obviously all the juice comes out of them.
Yeah.
And no one wanted to eat them because they didn't like that the colour had ran onto them. Even though they didn't taste of carrot, they tasted absolutely fine. No one wanted to eat them.
We had slightly pink mash last night because I'd put the beetroot in with the potatoes. Yeah. And Liam's like, why is this mash pink? Eat it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of potatoes, what about sweet potatoes? So is this the first year you're doing the sweet potatoes?
Yeah. I can't call it a star yet. I'm a little bit worried because I've heard that when you have a lot of foliage, and I have a lot of foliage, I am actually quite concerned that means it's just growing leaves and it's not growing tubers. I kind of want to have a little firk about in the soil, but I daren't because I don't know. I think they root partway up the stems again, don't they? So I'm not sure if I start trying to get into the ground, am I going to disturb the roots of things that are feeding tubers lower down? So I daren't, but I'm getting quite excited for them.
It's got to be soon, though, that we're harvesting them, right?
Well, I mean, the temperatures...
Because I've done them in a bucket before and had a really nice harvest from them. I was really pleased. They were garden centre bought plants, and I had 3 in quite a big size, maybe 2 in quite a big size bucket, but it gave a lovely harvest. And although I said at the time I wouldn't do it again because it was really exciting to harvest, but it was a tiny harvest. It took up a lot of space in the greenhouse because you want to be growing them under cover. But then, of course, you gave me your slips this year, so I ended up growing them again. And Becky is growing them as well because she had one of your plants. I had 3, and they're in the polytunnel. They have also grown lots of foliage, haven't had flowers like you.
Yeah.
But I'm so excited to see, and because people are starting to show on Instagram their harvest. So I'm like, well, it's going to be soon that we're going to be harvesting.
I mean, I only have 2 plants in that box that we've created for them.
Really?
That's There's only 2. I mean, I gave them all away and I only kept 2 for myself. But they're another thing that I'm a little bit anxious about them because I've never eaten purple sweet potato. I've only ever bought the orange flesh one. Mm-hmm. So there's a little bit of that in the back of my mind. Will I like purple sweet potato fries? Because that's what I love with them, wedges and fries. So I'm a little bit concerned. I mean, I'm assuming they're going to taste the same as any other, so I shall be fine. But I can't wait to try those. And if it works, they will hit the staple list very, very quickly if it works, because I love sweet potatoes.
Okay, we'll come back to those then in a few weeks' time. I'm excited about the purple colour because I remember going hunting for purple sweet potatoes because I think Tesco had them in at one time, and I deliberately went there to get them because I wanted to mash them to then use in my sourdough to make a purple sourdough bread loaf. Sourdough potato loaf.
Yeah.
And but I didn't get them at the time, so I'm excited for that. And we need to thank Jenny for
at Moorside
Garden. The potato. Yeah. Okay, we're getting through this list. So Evelyn said about Chinese artichoke. I've never done.
No.
Would you try?
I mean, you say artichoke and I'm already put off. I mean, I have dwarf artichokes in the garden, but I grew them last year and we didn't actually eat any because I grew them to save them to grow again this year and to give them away to other people. So this year will be the first year that I'll actually be harvesting them and to actually eat some ourselves. I don't quite know what I'm going to do with them yet. Yeah, they were a good size. So I'm kind of looking forward to trying them. But last year was all about growing a stock and sharing that stock with other people.
I think you gave me 10.
I gave a lot away in the end.
Yeah. So I've got a whole bed that's got those dwarf artichokes in. Interestingly, so these are the regular Jerusalem artichokes, but those are a dwarf variety. I also have the tall variety in the home garden. Normally, they would be, by now, 9-10 foot tall with the beautiful little sunflowers on top. They've not even gone past me. I'm 5'5", and so it just shows what a year, because they have been treated in exactly the same way this year as every year, which is completely neglected. They're not watered, nothing is done to them. They're just left in the ground and they grow again. But that just shows how dry it's been, that they have really been stunted. So it'll be interesting to see what the harvest of those is like. And I'm very interested to see how they compare to the dwarf ones. Now, we've mentioned loofah. And Debs and Val are both doing loofah as well. Been inspired to do them by the loofah queen, who is also now spreading the loofah love, because didn't everybody who got the green manure also get loofah seed?
Well, you're giving that away to the people that haven't had their package yet. But yes, they're getting loofah seeds.
Now they can look forward to it.
Yes,
so,
I thought I might as well.
The loofah love. Yeah,
definitely.
Okay. Cucamelon. That was Diana. She said, looked lovely, wouldn't grow it again, didn't like the taste. We hear that a lot, don't we, about cucamelon?
That's on my list. So if I just move my little book here where I can see it, I have things on let me put my glasses on. I have things on my list of things that I wouldn't grow again. And some of them you're going to be horrified at. So cucamelon is first on the list. Spinach is spinach. Sorry, don't like spinach. Broccoli rabe, absolutely not.
No.
No. But then I've also got the Chinese things, the pak choys, bok choys, all of those. We didn't like them. I think they're beautiful to look at. They look like AI almost, don't they? They're absolutely beautiful to look at, but we didn't enjoy them, so I'm not growing them again. Okay. But my biggest stars, obviously I'm going to say fruit is the big star of the garden for me. Asparagus, loofah, and drying beans and garlic. And the
Okay.
sweet corn. If sweet corn isn't technically a staple, although it is to me,
I
then
would
that
say
would be
it's
my
yeah.
star. Yeah.
I mean, I
But
just looked at a Dig Victory garden that I found online because it didn't give a list in my book there. So
no.
maybe sweet corn would have been on there. I don't know if I'd looked
Yeah.
at a different picture.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting, Claire. I think
Mm.
there's very few things that I feel I wouldn't want to ever grow again. Very few things. But yeah, in fact, I didn't put on my list, but of course was the picture that I put online this week, which is the mangel and
Yes.
that being like a trendy veg. I said this in the comment, and some people were like, one person at least said, "I didn't know they were trending. I thought Kerry was just doing that." Well, starting trends. No, it's not me starting them. It's really She Grows Veg because she's kind
Yeah.
of trying to bring back some of these, because mangel is not a new veg, it's just newly being introduced to home gardening. But yeah, I'm very excited about trying the mangel. I'm if I've been talking about it all year and then I finally try it and it's awful, that will be going off the list for sure. But I'm
But then
hopeful.
beetroot is on my staple list as well.
Yes, mine too. Yeah.
But
Love
I mean,
beetroot.
I forgot to sow my mangel seeds. It wasn't time.
You did.
And then I completely forgot. I got carried away with the hubbub of being very busy in spring and it just got overlooked. But I mean, I remember we've had this conversation because to me, it's just, I would call it a fodder beet. It's the same kind of thing that we would grow for livestock. And it's never really appealed to me to go and eat one of their beet. I mean, I don't like beetroot anyway, but I've never thought to go and pick one of their beetroots. Not that we don't personally grow it, but I could go and lay my hands on it at another farm. I wouldn't mind if I took some, but it's never really appealed to me. And is it sweeter than a normal beetroot? What is the
Supposed to
appeal
be,
to
yeah.
it? I'm assuming it is more of a sugar beet
Well,
than a beetroot.
Well, it's in between. So you're still going to get the savouriness of an earthiness of a beetroot, but with a higher sugar content. And also
Right.
it's about, I mean, I know your beetroots are the size of small babies, but this mangel is meant to be a bigger yielding plant.
Yeah.
It's like a bigger root. So, but we shall see. That one's still got a question mark hanging over it. Deirdre said about chilies, and in particular Serrano chilies, that was to make was it a margarita? I can't remember what the drink she said it was now.
Well, she said it had cucumber and basil in it, so I'm going to
Yeah.
guess it's a Serrano cucumber cooler, that kind of
Is that
drink.
I don't know that drink. And I know many drinks, but I don't know that drink. I think I am growing Serrano chilies though. So
And you have basil.
I do have basil and still got gherkins coming, so I can use
Well,
that.
there you
I
go.
also, going back to cucamelons, have a big pot of cucamelons in the freezer that my neighbour gave to me because their family didn't like them. And I said, yes, I would take them. I don't mind them. I wouldn't grow them because they seem faffy. But I've sliced them all in half for putting in drinks, so I could use those.
Yeah.
So yes, so Deirdre, we need the full recipe, please, for that drink after Sober October. I'm trying to see who we've missed. So Brenda also talked about fruit trees and having a fruit tree in Spain that had lemons and oranges growing on it at the same time, which sounds
I think that's amazing.
Wonderful. Oh, yes. So Alice said about lentils and David said about chickpeas. And David shared a picture of his chickpea harvest, which, bless him, was the tiniest. He probably got one tub of hummus of the chickpeas that he grew. And I think he said he wouldn't be doing it again. Have you ever grown a legume in there, like a chickpea or lentil type legume?
And I guess the closest I've come is amaranth.
Yeah,
I don't think
amaranth.
I don't know whether that quantifies in that because that's quinoa basically, isn't it? Kind of.
Similar. Yeah.
I mean, have I harvested enough out of it to make anything? No.
I was tempted to do chickpeas, not to harvest, but because they're a good one for a fruit tree guild, because they're a legume. So
yeah,
a good nitrogen fixer. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Yes,
sorry,
I
thought you were about to tell me that it was going to deal with pests.
No, afraid not.
I'd like to try kidney beans next year.
Okay.
I think they'll be going in my polytunnel because I think they need it hotter.
Do you have to grow those hotter? Okay.
I think they need it hotter.
Yard long beans in the polytunnel this year, but they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Probably didn't water them enough. And probably left them in their cells too long, which brings me to and one that Gary mentioned, which was okra. And I put a little laughy face next to this in my notebook because I tried to go okra this year. Then I tried to fob them off on you.
They
And
were
I
the
think both of us
saddest looking plants.
I think we both ended up throwing them away, didn't we?
Yeah. You
Yeah,
gave
they
me
didn't even
they were
make it to the
Well, they were
plot.
covered in aphids to start with when I got them out of the car. I was driving home that day and I was like, why have I got there's aphids in the car?
Oh, that's
And
awful.
so they were covered in them. And
Sorry,
well,
Claire.
there was no leaves really, Kerry. Only the very center leaf bud was coming. And yeah, they didn't do anything. But I mean, I might try it. And I couldn't remember whether they were okra or a chocha. And I could
No,
not
they were,
remember for ages, but they were okra, weren't they?
Yeah.
But they're two things that I'd like to try to grow next year.
I
both
still
of
want to
those.
try a chocha. So this year was my 3rd year attempt and still haven't managed. I think the problem with the achocha is maybe I'm growing them too early. They come up really quick, but they come up too quick and then they suffer in the cells because it's not time to plant them out. So I think the trick is to grow them later because they just do. They shoot up out of the cells and then, you need to get them out. Okay. Let's both try and do a chocha again next year then. Gary also mentioned asparagus pea and agreed that looks beautiful, tastes awful. He had globe artichoke on there. We've both been growing globe artichokes as well. I think we mentioned those recently. I haven't actually eaten one. I just let them flower. Shera mentioned bitter melon.
Yeah, and I've not heard of those. And I went to Google it and they're very different.
Yeah.
Very different. They weren't what I was expecting. Yes, they didn't look like a melon. For some reason I was expecting to look like a melon and they weren't.
That's what I've got in my head. So you'll have to put a picture on the screen.
Yeah. I don't know how
you see what they look like.
I didn't look enough to see what it is you're supposed to do with them and how you're supposed to eat them or process them. But I remember writing it down thinking, bitter melon, something to try.
Mm-hmm. I think we've covered everything that everybody put on the list. Yeah, I'm going to say it's done. If I've forgotten anyone, I'm super sorry. And also, I hope there's been a lot of sharing in the live chat of other things that we would consider unusual to grow. I mean, because I love unusual stuff. So I've got a much longer list than the samphire that I'm growing, the beef and onion tree, whole lemongrass, whole loads of random things. I have a whole video on it, which maybe we'll link in the description below.
Maybe we will.
So teasers for next week, Claire. I think our episode for next week, we've agreed, is going to be all things garlic because now is the time.
Yeah, if you haven't bought it, you really need to.
I'm going to say...
Yeah.
I'm only reusing garlic this year, or my home saved. Are you buying any? Okay.
I don't think so. I think I'm using I need to go and check that it's all okay still, but I think I'm only using my own.
So what we would like is your garlic questions, but also general questions, because we don't think garlic is probably going to be a big main event topic. No. So let's have lots of viewers' questions for next week. So any topic that you want to talk about, also let us know your suggestions, because we're going to do next week's episode and then we're taking a little mid-season break for half term, so we're gonna have a couple of weeks breather and come back strong for November to do a whole run till the new year. So we need lots of suggestions for things that you would like as topics. Next week, Claire, what are you planning to do in the garden?
Well, obviously I still need to do that grapevine, but it's time to harvest the chilies and the peppers. I have noticed a few of them have gone a little bit mushy, so I think I've been waiting for them to ripen, but we've had a couple of cold nights overnight and I think some of them are just not quite as happy as they were. So I'm going to harvest the chilies and the peppers, sort out the grapevine, and that's about it. Just the general tidying that you have to do at this time of year. What about you? What have you got to do?
I'm going to do the same.
Well done.
I was going to mention chilies as my hot because they are hot, but also finally ripening. So I have got quite a few that are ready to harvest. So I think I'm going to go through them all. I probably won't give up on the plants just yet because there's still green ones on there. I'm really hopeful that the sweet peppers on the plot are starting to turn because the long red Marconi are so close and there are so many big peppers on there. I'm really excited about those. I've got on my thing here, what was I going to make next week, Claire? I must have said before we started, I would do my chestnuts.
Yes,
And I've got to make pasta sauce when my new jars come. So I think that's everything.
it is. It is. Thank you very much, Kerry. It's been
Thank you.
absolutely lovely yet again. And thank you to all of you still for supporting us. We'll catch you next week. Look after yourselves.
Bye.
Bye bye.